It has been a while since I made my original survivor ranking video for Forsaken, and since then we have not only gotten a new survivor, but there has been plenty of balance changes, making it quite outdated. There is a total of 11 different survivors in Forsaken, and in this video, I'm going to be going over each survivor's abilities and stats, give some tips on how to use them, then give my personal ranking of how good they are on a tier list. Now, I'm not the greatest Forsaken player, so I get a lot of help from two other YouTuber friends, Witherstar and Encrypted. They have a lot more time invested into this game, and I really appreciate their help. Keep in mind too, rankings should always be taken with a grain of salt, since how good a character performs will vary tremendously on your teammates, killer, ping, etc. Regardless, hit that like button, subscribe, and enjoy. Starting off with one of the default survivors, we have Noob. They have 100 health, 3 different abilities, and a 3-star difficulty. They are a survivalist, which is someone who aims to keep themselves alive while not focusing much on support. The first ability is Bloxy Cola. When activated, Noob slowly drinks a Bloxy Cola, which grants them speed 1 for 10 seconds. This can be a huge help for escaping killers, but unless you're at a safe distance, it can be a bit risky to use due to the long windup. This has a cooldown of 50 seconds. Their second ability is Slate Skin Potion. Noob drinks a potion, getting Slate Skin 2 for 6 seconds. When in Slate Skin, Noob is practically untouchable, but the Slate Skin can technically break if dealt enough damage. They are also extremely slow, so you will not gain any distance during its effect. If the effect wears off naturally, Noob gains speed 2 for 2 seconds. They can also end it early by activating the ability again, getting speed 1 instead. The purpose of this ability is to stall out chases longer and can be used in emergencies if you have fully run out of stamina. This has a cooldown of 55 seconds. Their final ability is Ghost Burger. When activated, Noob eats a Ghost Burger, getting undetectable and invisibility 4 for 10 seconds. This does not make them fully invisible, but pretty transparent. Undetectable prevents killers from spotting them using detection abilities, so it can be used to shake the killer off your trail if you quickly hide behind a corner. This ability has a cooldown of 45 seconds. With Noob being a survivalist, they are unable to do anything to help their teammates. They are a solely selfish character with the goal of being as annoying to catch as possible. Noob can be quite powerful if left as the final survivor, using Bloxy Colas to create huge distance, Slate Skins to stall out time, and Ghost Burgers to potentially get away, winning the game. But in terms of ensuring that the survivors win and the killer loses, he isn't great, having no form of support and only really being good in LMS. As long as the killer takes care of them before letting them reach last man standing, they're just gonna eventually die without helping anyone else. Honestly, Slate Skin is only good in last man standing since it stalls out a little time. Normally, the killer can just sit there and wait, regaining their stamina and usually getting 1 to 2 3 hits once the Slate Skin runs out. It is not worth using during a chase and obviously doesn't help when the killer isn't around, so it usually just ends up being pointless. Bloxy Colas can work well if successfully used, but it can be difficult to pull off, much harder than simply stunning them like other characters do, which can be done mid-chase and creates a lot of distance. The Bloxy can only really be used once when you see the killer approaching from far away. Because of all these issues, and only really being decent at last man standing, I'm gonna put Noob in the C tier. I think Slate Skin needs a serious buff, like maybe having some slight regeneration when activated so it could actually be useful. For next survivor, we have Shedletsky, the Chicken Boy. They have 100 health, 2 abilities, and a 2-star difficulty. They're considered a sentinel, which is someone who can directly attack and harm the killer in order to protect their teammates or themselves. Their first ability is Slash. Shedletsky slashes with their sword, creating a small hitbox that stuns the killer for 3 seconds if connected. Shedletsky gains resistance 2 and is heavily slowed during the duration of this ability. This can be used to either help yourself when being chased or aid another survivor. This is a cooldown of 40 seconds. The second ability is Fried Chicken. When activated, Shedletsky pulls out a piece of fried chicken and eats it like the fat ass he is. He instantly gains 5 HP and an additional 35 HP over the course of 10 seconds. If hit by the killer during the healing is cancelled. This is a very powerful ability, but can only be used twice per game. Shedletsky is probably the easiest survivor to use in the game, and is also really good. Both of his abilities are fantastic. His slash is quite easy to hit, having a short windup, decent lingering hitbox, and a 3-second stun, which is a pretty solid amount of time. If landed, you can easily create a ton of distance. Shedletskys often like to camp around corners and wait for killers to come around while chasing another survivor, surprising them with a slash. And even if you do miss your slash and take some damage, if you manage to get away, you can heal that health back. He has great survivability and can help his teammates. There's a reason why this character is so damn popular. In my opinion, he's one of the best general survivors in the game. There's never going to be a situation where he isn't good, and you almost always want at least a couple of them on your team. Because of that, I'm gonna have to put them as an S tier. Really good for a free character. Next up, we have one of my personal favorites, the Builderman. They have 90 health, 2 abilities, and a 3-star difficulty. They are a support character aiming to help their teammates. Their first ability is Sentry. When activated, the Builderman takes 6 seconds to construct a sentry. The sentry has a circular radius around it, which if the killer enters, the sentry will begin shooting at them, with each bullet inflicting slowness 2 for 1 second. If the Builderman is hit while attempting to construct a sentry, it will be cancelled. The sentry will stay up indefinitely, however, it has 30 health, meaning it usually takes 2 hits to be destroyed, although certain abilities can one-shot it, like 1x's Mass Infection. Each Builderman can have 1 sentry at a time, and for each Builderman that has placed a sentry, the range is reduced by 16%. However, this range cannot go below 8 studs. This ability has a cooldown of 45 seconds. The second ability is Dispenser. When activated, the Builderman spends 6 seconds to build a dispenser, which heals 1 health per second to any nearby survivors. This has no cap, so you can heal the whole team at once. Each Builderman can only place 1, and its healing is reduced by 8% for each additional dispenser currently placed, but the healing cannot go below 0.3 health per second. The dispenser only has has 15 health, meaning it's usually one shot by most abilities. This ability has a cooldown of 45 seconds. The sentry can be an extremely annoying obstacle for the killer, since it's practically unavoidable that you'll have to deal with one. They can be placed in crucial choke points, and if the killer doesn't slow down to stop them, survivors can continuously loop around it, taking advantage of the killer's slowness. In the time it takes you to destroy a sentry, the survivor you were chasing could easily escape. Also, if the killer doesn't take care of your dispenser, it can heal several people up to max health without you even doing anything. Builderman provides very powerful support, and it's always nice to have one on your team. However, as a killer, once you've destroyed the sentry, the Builderman can't do much to defend themselves, as he obviously can't stop to build one mid-chase. It's a one-time get out of jail card, but if the killer decides to keep chasing you, you're gonna have to hope that you have a teammate to help you. I often target Builderman first for this very reason. They provide great support, but are relatively easy to take care of. Because of that, I'm gonna put the Builderman at the top of A tier. The support isn't so powerful that you lose the game if you don't take care of them, and they're pretty easy to kill, but I'd still say they're a really helpful asset to any team of survivors, slowing down the killer and healing others. Next up, we have arguably the most hated survivor in this game, Twotime the Mosquito. He has 80 health, 3 abilities, a passive ability, and a 4-star difficulty. They are a sentinel. His passive ability involves one of his other abilities, so I'll talk about that later. Their first ability is Special Dagger. When activated, they stab forward. If you hit the killer on the front, they take 10 damage, heal 2 times for 10 HP, and apply Slowness 2 and Helpless 1 for 1 second. Helpless prevents the killer from attacking, but it's quite a short duration. This ability gets a lot better if you backstab the killer, stunning them for an impressive 3.5 seconds, dealing 20 damage and healing 2 times for 20 HP. Landing the stab also activates their passive ability, Oblation. When performing a front stab, the Oblation meter is filled by 37%. When backstabbing, it's filled by 56%. Once this meter is full, Twotime will be able to respawn upon dying, which involves their last ability, Ritual. The dagger ability has a cooldown of 30 seconds. But before we talk about the ritual, their second ability is Crouch. When activated, Twotime crouches down, gaining Undetectable and Invisibility 3. This can last up to 10 seconds, or you can cancel it early by clicking the ability again. If cancelled manually and far away from the killer, Twotime will gain Slowness 2 for up to 15 seconds, depending on how far away the killer is. The farther they are, the longer the duration. It also highlights Twotime, making them quite the vulnerable target. So don't just randomly use Crouch. However, if you uncrouch near the killer, nothing happens, and if you're right next to them, get speed 2 for 1 second. If you use Dagger while crouching, you will perform a huge lunge stab, making this one of the most powerful stuns in the game, given that you consistently hit their back, that is. Now with that, we can move on to our final ability, Ritual. Twotime stabs the ground, creating a respawn location. Upon dying, Twotime will respawn here, having half of their HP left. They are also given speed 2 for 6 seconds and weakness 5 for 12 seconds. Twotime will also teleport to the respawn location if entering last man standing, and their stats depend on if the Oblation meter is filled. If filled, Twotime will have 110 health, be healed 50 health, and not receive any weakness. If not filled, the same effects will occur as if dying with a full meter. Twotime does take some skill to use, but holy cow, a good Twotime player can be an absolute nightmare. It often feels like they hit you straight in the face, but somehow still ends up being a backstab. Genuinely so annoying. And keep in mind, not only are you being stunned for 3.5 seconds, Twotime heals 20 health, and if they land just 2 backstabs, they now get to respawn after you kill them, so trying to actually finish them off feels impossible. I usually try and take care of them early so they don't have the chance to fill up their Oblation meter, but as a Sentinel, that's kind of what they want. They end up pulling away from more defenseless support characters who can then make it a nightmare for you to kill that Twotime. And with the insane lunge hitbox, you have to constantly check behind you to make sure a Twotime isn't sneaking up, since they can easily stun you from behind when you're focused on chasing someone else. The lunge stab, second life, passive healing, all makes me personally think that Twotime is another S tier. However, I am going to put them as a low S tier due to the wind up nerf of the dagger. This makes it quite a bit harder to do backstabs since killers have more time to react, but I still think Twotime is a very strong survivor. For our next survivor, we have Elliot, the pizza boy. They have 80 health, 2 abilities, 2 passive abilities, and a 2-star difficulty. They are very much a support character, aiming to heal those around them. Their first passive ability is Deliverer's Resolve, which highlights any survivors who have taken damage for 12 seconds, alerting Elliot of their location. Their second passive ability is Order Up, which involves their first ability, so we'll talk about that after. Elliot's first ability is Pizza Throw. When activated, Elliot throws out a pizza, which if touching a survivor will instantly heal them 5 health, and then progressively heal 20 HP over the span of 5 seconds. If the survivor is hit by the killer, this extra heal will be cancelled. The passive ability Order Up gives an extra 4 healing for each generator that has been solved, capping out at an extra 20 health. This is pretty crazy, as each pizza can heal up to 45 health, which is nearly half health for most characters. However, this healing is decreased by 15% for every Elliot in the game, so make sure not too many people are using him. Another unfortunate thing is that Elliot cannot eat these pizzas himself, so it's exclusively a support ability. This has a cooldown of 45 seconds. The second ability is Rush Hour. When activated, Elliot gains speed 3 for 3 seconds instantly, basically giving them free distance when being chased. In order to use it again, Elliot must heal another survivor, and it cannot be another Elliot. On top of that, it is a 40-second cooldown. Despite any nerfs it has gotten, Elliot still remains the king of support. Being able to heal a survivor mid-chase without any kind of slowdown or repercussion is insane. Especially if you sold a lot of generators, Elliot's can be a serious pain as the killer since they continuously heal other survivors. Their support is so powerful that if you do not take care of them, you will not win the game. And even if you do target Elliot, they are not particularly easy to catch. Rush Hour is an incredible survivalist ability, since it can be activated at any time without any form of windup or consequence. They literally just gain distance for free, and all they have to do to get it back is heal another survivor, which they wanted to do anyways. I know there seems to be some kind of sentiment in the community that Elliot has been nerfed too much, but I still think he is the best support character in the game. And in a teamwork based game, support characters are by far the most valuable, so I'm putting him at the top of S tier. Great character, super easy to use, yet very powerful. Next up, we have a bit of an interesting one, 007 N7. He has 100 health, 3 abilities, 1 passive ability, and a 4-star difficulty. They are another survivalist character, aiming to evade and survive against the killer for as long as possible. Their passive ability, Dex, allows them to see where the furthest survivor spawn is located, which involves his other abilities. His first and main ability is Clone. When activated, 007 creates a clone of themselves, which lives for 10 seconds. The real 007 is given invisibility for and undetectable, with the goal of tricking the killer into chasing after the fake clone. This clone has the same amount of health as 007. The ability has a cooldown of 27 seconds, which is quite short. The behavior of the clone depends on 007's second ability, Inject. When activated, you can switch between 3 movement types: Aimless Wandering, where the clone walks around randomly; Pathfinding, where the clone runs towards the farthest away survivor spawn; and Cursor, which causes the clone to follow after the survivor's cursor. You can switch between these targeting modes whenever, with the goal of tricking the killer. Their final ability is Cool GOI. When activated, 007 stands in place for 5.5 seconds, then teleports to the survivor spawn location farthest away from him. However, if you are hit while using this ability, it is cancelled. This ability has a cooldown of 50 seconds. 007 is probably the most inconsistent character in this game. The clone completely depends on how smart the killer is, so if you're playing against someone who's sweaty, they will almost never fall for it unless perfectly executed. However, it can still be quite useful, as you can let the clone tank a hit when at low HP, which forces the killer into a long kill animation, letting you escape. You can also use this to activate John Doe traps, but I wouldn't really do this, since it gives John Doe speed and will probably kill whoever he was chasing. Still, I'd say this is a very gimmicky ability. Cool GUI, however, can actually be really good, but specifically for last man standing. If you're at the other side of the map, you can do 2 things. Either start teleporting so that once the killer reaches you, you aren't there anymore, creating a huge amount of distance and likely winning the game. Or you can play mind games and choose not to teleport, hoping the killer will expect you to do so and go to a nearby survivor spawn. And once teleported or not teleported, you can use the clone ability to give yourself undetectable, making it impossible to find you. For this reason, I think 007 is the best survivor for last man standing. If you accidentally let one be the last one remaining, good luck. However, for the entire rest of the game, they aren't great. You can have some hilarious moments, completely fooling the killer, but most of the time this isn't gonna work and you're just gonna continue being chased. Cool GUI also isn't very helpful mid-game, unless you have a teammate that can tell you where the killer is. The windup is just too long to use upon reaction of seeing the killer approaching, and it obviously can't be used mid-chase. It's only really if you manage to hide behind a corner or in last man standing. Still, being the best survivor for last man standing definitely makes you quite the threat, and the clone kill strategy can be pretty damn annoying. So I'm gonna put them at the very bottom of B tier. I think he might be down in C tier with Noob, but I think he has more potential. For our next survivor, we have Taph. They have 100 health, 2 abilities, and a 2-star difficulty. They are a support/trapper character. Their first ability is Subspace Trip Mine. Taph throws out a trip mine after a 3-second windup. It becomes transparent, but makes a noise and glows every 16 seconds, revealing its location. Whenever a killer gets near it, the bomb will automatically explode, inflicting the killer with Subspace 3 and Helpless 1 for 5 seconds. Subspace 3 makes it extremely difficult to see and messes with your camera moving around. Helpless prevents you from using your moves, so these 2 combined effects are extremely annoying. The bomb has a lifespan of 50 seconds, then automatically explodes. It can also be manually exploded by the killer hitting it with any ability, which makes it then only inflict Subspace 1 and no Helpless. Taph can also be affected by their own bomb if in range, so be careful. The duration of these effects are reduced by 0.5 seconds for each additional Taph currently alive. This has a cooldown of 40 seconds. Their other ability is Tripwire. When activated, Taph crouches down and places one end of a tripwire. You can then walk to any other point and click the ability again to place the other end. The tripwire can be infinitely long, however, nothing could be in the way. If the killer walks into a tripwire, they are inflicted with slowness too, and they are highlighted to all the other survivors for 8 seconds, which is quite handy. These effects are reduced by 0.5 seconds for each additional Taph alive. The tripwires have an unlimited duration, however, the killer can attack the tripwire if spotted, breaking it instantly. Taph can have up to 3 tripwires placed, but they cannot be within 8 studs of each other. This ability has a cooldown of 25 seconds. When Taph first came out, they weren't really that good, with the subspace effect not being that bad, and the tripwires were easy to deal with, so he felt kind of cosmetic. But he has received some big buffs since then, and he is honestly one of the most rage-inducing characters to play against now, only behind Twotime. The subspace effect is much worse now, especially if you play on epileptic mode. Maybe I'm just blind, but when I get hit by a Taph bomb, it is impossible to pursue whoever I was chasing due to how badly it distorts my vision. Like, I genuinely can't see anything in this. The bombs are a serious threat now, and you have to be very careful to avoid them. The tripwires can be frustrating too, but if you just time your attack well, you can run right through them. Still, they will sometimes catch me off guard, and slowness plus highlighting is quite detrimental since every survivor cannot move away from your current location. Taph definitely does struggle with the fact that it can't do anything to defend themselves while being chased, since all their abilities slow them down dramatically, but they can at least set up several safe spots for themselves, which they can run through while being chased. The trip mines will also explode through walls, so it's sometimes completely impossible to avoid them on certain maps. You're just gonna have to deal with being temporarily blinded and potentially losing whoever you are chasing. Maybe it's just a skill issue, but I think Taph is now an extremely valuable support character, and I'm actually gonna put them in S tier, one spot above Twotime. Before the wind up nerf, I probably would have put Taph below Twotime, but now I think his support is a little bit more valuable. You can no longer just ignore their bombs, and sometimes they are nearly impossible to avoid. If you don't kill Taph, they are going to be a guaranteed annoyance and possibly save multiple survivors. For next survivor, we have a very popular choice, Guest. They have 115 health, 3 abilities, and a 4-star difficulty. Their first ability is Block. Guest blocks standing in place, becoming invincible for 1 second and having their movement greatly reduced for 2 seconds. If the killer attacks them during the 1 second block, the killer is slowed down by 30%, Guest regains their movement speed, and gains a charge for the next ability, Punch. Guest can block every 24 seconds. Punch can only be used after landing a successful block, and you can only have 1 charge stored at a time. When activated, after a short windup, Guest punches forward, stunning the killer for 2 seconds. If the punch is used immediately after the block, it has a shorter windup and stuns the killer for 3.5 seconds. Their third ability is Charge. Guest charges forward for 1.5 seconds, and if connected with a killer, knocks them back and locks their abilities for 1.25 seconds. It also gives Guest some invincibility for the same duration. If you miss a charge, however, you are given slowness 2 for, hold on, 3 times the Guest distance from the nearest killer divided by 13? Who the fuck came up with this equation? Charge also immediately ends if crashing into a wall, and stamina is not regained while charging. Guest actually does have a secret passive ability, which gives him priority of being hit over other survivors. For example, if you stand inside of a Taph and John Doe hits you, you're the only one that's going to take damage. However, moves that hit multiple people, like Nova, aren't affected by this. Guest is a survivor that can be deadly in the hands of a skilled player. Block is one of the most interesting moves in the game, not just because of the fact that it can block an attack, but the amount of mind games you can play with it. Killers attacking a Guest will always be paranoid of an incoming block and will sometimes give up a free hit in fear. The sheer threat of a block is an advantage, keeping you alive without even using it. Then if you do land it, you first slow down the killer, then at any time you could choose to punch. And then, once only 24 seconds have passed, you can attempt to block again. While this can be really good, in some games you will pop off, landing every block and being unkillable, blocking will always be inconsistent no matter how good you are. It all depends on the killer and how good they are, which isn't something you always know or can control. They might be a very cautious killer and you end up missing a block, resulting in a nasty punish. Or they could be a very reckless killer, choosing to attack at any available time, not falling for any mind games. Or sometimes they will just straight up miss you. I hate when this happens. How are you going to be so trash that it actually helps you? Dash is a decent move, but it's a bit map dependent. I say it's best used on cliffs or edges since you can knock the killer off, gaining a solid amount of time. It can also be used to annoy a killer while chasing after another survivor, or buy yourself a little time while being chased. It's not super helpful, but at the same time, it doesn't hurt to use, unless you completely miss. Just make sure you don't try to use the charge to gain distance. The slowness is not worth it. I used to think Guest wasn't actually that good since they relied on a lot of prediction, but I've kind of changed my mind. You can usually assess the patterns of how killers attack, and really good players will do that, consistently landing their blocks. A skilled Guest player can feel impossible to kill, and for that reason, I'm gonna put them in the A tier, one spot below the Builderman. I think the Guest has a bit of a bad reputation since it's very popular amongst new players, but he can be very good in the right hands. But I still think the support the Builderman gives to the team is overall more helpful. Next up, we have the pumpkin boy, Dusekkar. But before we get to that, if you are enjoying this video so far, please hit that like button and subscribe. These videos take a ton of work to make, so I really appreciate the support. They have 90 health, 2 abilities, 1 passive ability, and they are the only survivor with a 5-star difficulty, which is low-key deserved. This guy is rough to play, being a pure support character. Their passive ability is Levitation, which makes so that Dusekkar does not create any footstep sounds. Dussekkar's first ability is Spawn Protection. When activated, Dusekkar will cast a shield upon a survivor that they hover the cursor over. Dussekkar's movement is reduced by 30%, and the protected survivor gains resistance 4. This shield can last up to 3.5 seconds, and will break if the line of sight is severed for too long. Also, if the survivor shielded would have taken lethal damage, the shield will absorb that damage and break. Survivors have to wait another 25 seconds before they can be shielded again, even if it's another Dusekkar. If 3 Dusekkars are protecting survivors at once, the shields explode and they are all inflicted with blindness 3 and slowness 3 for 5 seconds. Thankfully, nobody plays this character, so this isn't an issue. This ability has a cooldown of 30 seconds. Dusekkar's second ability is Plasma Beam. He shoots out a plasma beam at wherever your cursor is pointing, making it quite easy to hit. If hitting the killer, they are inflicted with slowness 2 for 3 seconds, which is very annoying and makes it impossible to keep chasing if you're constantly being hit with this. The duration of this effect is reduced by 0.5 seconds for every other Dusekkar alive. If hitting a survivor, the survivor gains speed 1 for 4 seconds and gains 20 overhealth, which is a very solid buff. This ability has a cooldown of 30 seconds. Dusekkar is easily one of, if not the strongest support characters in the game. If you do not immediately take care of them as the killer, you will lose the game. The shielding, the slowness, the speed on the survivors, it is genuinely impossible to kill anyone if Dusekkar is allowed to sit back and spam his abilities. He can also do all this from a safe distance, often camping jumping on ledges where the killer can't easily reach them. Usually, it's best to target survivors with the plasma beam since they get some extra health and speed, but the killer is easier to hit. However, Dusekkar's biggest issue is how simple they are to kill. They have no self-preservation with their abilities, with all of them activating too slow to be used mid-chase, and of course, they can't shield themselves. Dusekkar is extremely reliant on having a good team that can defend them, and even with a good team, Dusekkars are usually the first ones to go. But that's just because of how powerful they are. Most survivors will die eventually if hard targeted the whole game. Dusekkars just always happen to be the first ones. If you can avoid the killer, stay a safe distance away, and manage to shake them off, you will carry the team. In my last tier list, I put Dusekkar quite low, but his support has become so incredible that I have to put them in S tier, one spot below Elliot. I think Elliot is still a better support character thanks to Rush Hour allowing them to stay alive. But if Dusekkar had a better way not to instantly die, they would easily be the strongest support and maybe even the strongest survivor in the game. For our next survivor, we have Veeronica. They have 100 health, 3 abilities, 1 passive ability, and a 3-star difficulty. They are a survivalist aiming to gain immense speed from their skateboard and being impossible to catch. When this survivor first came out, they were an absolute menace, but they've received quite a few nerfs since that. Their passive ability is Metal Frame. Veeronica cannot use healing items like medkits, pizzas, or dispensers. She instead has a rechargeable battery that she can use to heal herself up to 50 health and max capacity. The battery starts at 30% charged and is filled up by 8% for each puzzle solved, and a couple other things that I'll mention. Their first ability is Vandalism. Veeronica equips a spray can, which she can use to spray graffiti on walls. This takes 5 seconds to complete. The graffiti has 5 health and can be destroyed by the killer. Up to 3 graffiti can be placed at a time, anywhere on the map. Once finished, it provides a small hitbox where Veeronica can use their skate ability. When activated, Veeronica begins skating, being slightly faster than a regular sprint. This also drains stamina much faster and ends once you reach 0 stamina. Your turn speed is also significantly reduced, but when approaching a wall, you can jump to perform a trick, greatly increasing your speed and regaining some stamina. If you crash into a wall, skate will end, Veeronica takes 5 damage, and gains slowness 4 for 2.5 seconds. Pretty punishing. Whenever skate is activated, the graffiti used will be briefly highlighted to the killer if they're within 25 studs, exposing its location. Their final ability is Broadcast, which involves their skating. V can switch between 3 modes, that being phase, bumper, and mobile. In phase mode, if colliding with the killer, V will phase right through, gaining resistance 2 for 3 seconds and speed 2 for 1.5 seconds. This also recharges your battery by 15%. It used to also bounce you backwards if you were to crash into a wall, but this has been removed. In bumper mode, if V crashes into the killer, she will knock them back and charge your battery by 15%. This does no self-damage and instantly ends skate. The killer then goes on a 20-second cooldown where they cannot be bumped by any other Veeronicas. In mobile mode, the increased turning you get from doing tricks is extended an extra 2 seconds after landing. V cannot switch between modes mid-skate, so make sure you've picked the right one in advance. Their final ability is the healing battery we've mentioned, which can be used whenever and does not slow down Veeronica. However, it is auto-cancelled if V takes any damage, reaches max health, or if the battery runs out. When Veeronica first came out, they were absolutely unstoppable, but they have been nerfed a lot since. They aren't as fast while skating, they lose stamina faster, and several of their modes have been nerfed. They are also definitely very map dependent, since on certain maps, the tricks can allow them to take crazy shortcuts, gaining huge distance, while on other maps, they kind of gain some speed, but lose all their stamina in the process, with the killer eventually catching up. Personally, I think mobile is their best mode, since bumping into the killer just puts you into harm's way, and phase is a bit gimmicky. The battery is very powerful, and personally, I think it's worth losing healing from others for, but you need to work to regain it. Veeronica can easily be an A tier or even an S tier on maps that they excel on, but they can struggle on a couple flat maps, so I'm gonna put them as a solid A tier, one spot above Guest. They are definitely the best survivalists in the game. However, I don't really think they deserve to be an S tier because they don't give any support to their team, apart from an occasional slight knockback when using bumper, which nobody uses. You kinda just sit around being useless for most of the game until you finally get chased. Sure, they are annoying to catch, but if you're not on one of the maps they excel on, you should still be able to catch them eventually. Now, that leaves us with our final survivor, the gambler, the GOAT, Chance. They can have between 60 to 120 health, they have 4 abilities, 1 passive ability, and a custom difficulty, which is just a bunch of slot machines. Their passive ability is Unpredictable Fate, which sets its max HP between 70 to 90 at the start of each game. Their first ability is Coin Flip. When activated, Chance flips a coin, getting either heads or tails. Heads grants an additional charge to all of his other abilities. Tails instead gives Chance a level of weakness, which goes up every time you land a tails. The weakness lasts for 15 seconds, but still stays the same level the next time you land tails, so it can stack up very high. For each consecutive tails, the odds of landing heads is increased by 2.5%, so the odds are in your favor. Let's go gambling. This has a short cooldown of 1.75 seconds, so it can be spammed. Their second ability is One Shot. Chance pulls out a flintlock, which will do one of 3 things. It starts with a 50% chance to shoot, 25% chance to do nothing, and 25% chance to explode, dealing 25 damage to Chance, and actually stunning the killer for 5 seconds if they are nearby. The odds of a successful shot go up by 20% for each additional charge, with at 3 charges having a 90% chance to succeed, 5% chance to explode, and a 5% chance to do nothing. A successful shot will stun the killer for 1 to 4 seconds, depending on how close by Chance is. The closer they are, the longer the stun. Using this ability removes all of your charges. The next ability is Reroll. Chance will also reset their max health to a random number between 60 and 120, which can either be good or bad. The number selected is buffed depending on how many charges are used, with an extra 5% at 2 charges and 10% at 3 charges. Their final ability is Hat Fix. It can only be used at 3 charges and fully resets your weakness stats back to 0. It also gives you your gun back if it happened to explode. While Chance seems like a character that will suffer from inconsistency, and don't get me wrong, he can sometimes, it's not as bad as you would think. You can coin flip pretty safely when the killer isn't nearby and just wait for the weakness to run out. If you're careful, it won't even be that much of an issue. And since the odds of a head go up with each tails, it usually won't take you that long to get 3 charges. The biggest luck aspect is when you're currently being chased. You could try to get lucky enough to get a charge for the gun, but personally I think this is a very foolish decision since you want 3 charges anyways before shooting, so you're very likely just to give yourself a ton of weakness, making the killer's job easier. I say his other most inconsistent mechanic is his health, since you could get really screwed over and continuously get low numbers. Still, I'd say Chance is actually more consistent of a character than Guest. Let me explain. If you want to help your teammates, somebody like Guest would have to run in, try and bait out a block, then punch them, which isn't very likely to happen since most people just ignore Guest in favor of targeting supports. Every block is also a gamble on their life, since if missed, they could end up being in lots of trouble. Meanwhile, Chance can shoot from a safe distance away and doesn't require any attention from the killer. Even if the killer ignores Chance, they can't ignore Bullet. This is why I believe Chance is the best sentinel when it comes to defending others, even though that's supposed to be the Guest role. So I'm gonna put them in the A tier, one spot above Veeronica. I will admit, I have definitely struggled more with Guests, but I think Chance's capability to actually help others gives it a bit of an edge, despite the luck involved. But with that, we have officially ranked all the characters. Here is my final tier list, and again, thanks to Ed Cryptid and Witherstar for helping me out. Make sure to give them some support. I really like getting some feedback from others when making tier lists, just so they don't end up being too biased. If you did enjoy this video, hit that like button and subscribe. Also, let me know in the comments below if there's any of my rankings you don't agree with, which I bet there's gonna be quite a few of you. Also, consider joining my Discord. I'll be active there after this video is posted. I will see you guys in the next video.